Bambiz presents Elder Law Growth, the podcast where we share what's actually working in elder law and estate planning marketing straight from the team behind it. Let's get to it.
Welcome back to the Elder Law Growth Podcast presented by Bambiz, the team that helps elder law and estate planning attorneys grow their firms, fill their workshops, and connect with their communities using marketing that actually works. Learn more at bambiz.net. I'm Jason, and today I'm joined by Caleb DeLon. Caleb is the COO of Paperback Expert, a book writing, publishing, and marketing firm that has helped business owners, financial advisors, and attorneys publish more than 275 books since 2013. The company started as a family business in Little Rock and is now based in Lexington, Kentucky, with Caleb running day-to-day operations alongside his father, Michael, the founder. Their whole model rests on one idea they describe better than anyone. They look like a publishing company, but they are really a marketing company that uses books to help experts win more clients. What I appreciate about how Caleb and his team think is that they never treat a book as a vanity project. They treat it as a marketing asset with a job to do, and they hand every client a specific plan for turning that book into booked appointments and revenue. So today we're talking about one of the fastest ways an attorney can profit from a book, reactivating the warm prospects already sitting in their database. Before we get into the dormant list idea, give our audience the quick version. How did Paperback Expert start? And how did you end up running operations for a company that uses books as a marketing tool?
Jason, thanks for having me on. Paperback Expert started because my dad, Michael, had a radio background. He worked in radio advertising and sales, loved marketing, loved reading and thinking about it. And then he transitioned from that to be part of actually a nonprofit ministry to marriages and families called Family Life Today that was based in Little Rock, Arkansas. He came on with them in their audio department and was with them for a decade, basically helping to get their daily radio programs produced and on the air. After a decade there, he left to start his own marketing consulting firm, but nobody would take him seriously because he had just spent a decade in the nonprofit sector. He would get an initial meeting, go in and talk with them and share his marketing ideas and say, well, great, like, what have you been doing before this? Like, oh, I've been helping marriages and families. Like, oh, Michael, that's so honorable. Great for you. Oh, look at the time. I've got another appointment. I'll follow up with you. Nobody took him seriously. He didn't have credibility, even though he knew the marketing stuff. He knew the sales stuff. He had the ideas. He knew he would be able to help them. So he got so tired of that, he decided to publish his own book. So he wrote and self-published his very first book on marketing himself. Wrote it on nights and weekends, found a cover designer, investigated how you get an ISBN number, published the book, and started using it whenever he would have new prospect appointments. A week ahead of time, he would mail them a copy of his book and say, hey, just read that before we talk. Then he started walking into these meetings, and the first thing he saw is on their desk a copy of his book, dog-eared, highlighted, and underlined. They'd read his book, and now he was the expert. He was the one who had written the book on how small business owners could do better with their marketing. And the conversation went straight to, hey, Michael, in your book, you say this. How do you help me with that? He started getting clients. People started taking him seriously. And then one day he thought, wow, like this book thing works. Why doesn't everybody do it? And then he remembered how much of a pain it was to do. It's like, oh, that's why nobody does it, because it is so hard and takes so long to write a book. And so he made a list of every single step that's required and said, oh, like I could do almost all of these for somebody else, except for the content. I just have to like interview them and ask questions and get their ideas out of their head. And that's the content of the book. And then all the weird stuff I'll just do. And that is the idea that became Paperback Expert and has grown into the publishing firm that it is today. So I helped him build it early on, like part-time in college, went off and did some other stuff, then have been back last 5 years as his right-hand man.
I love it. That's so cool. So we personally have 3 books that we've written. Our most popular is a book called The Unstoppable Growth Book. And we use that book as well in the same process. It's a really good high level book and just getting people to understand the true value of marketing from a digital marketing angle. And the way you described it is literally what we do. And it's really cool sometimes when I get on calls and follow up conversations with individuals and the first thing they say is, hey, like I just, highlighted, circled, or underlined some of these sections. Can we talk about that stuff? And I'm like, Yeah, of course. And then when I go to conferences, because I go to conferences a lot, I typically, it's one of my favorite things to give off just because a lot of people have told us that they like the book. It's definitely made a big difference in even those relationships because I've had people that travel to a conference and by the time they get back to their home market, they've read, two of our books and they're like primed, essentially ready to go. But I guess my main question to you on that is, let's start with the problem before the solution. Almost every attorney I know is sitting on a list of people who reached out once, and then, those people, it went quiet, essentially. Why do you think so many business owners treat that list as dead, essentially?
Yeah, we like to call that the dormant database, kind of
Yes.
database of prospects that you had a conversation with, or maybe you just got an email from, and you haven't talked to them in years. They haven't talked to you in years. I think business owners treat it as dead because they don't know how to reactivate. They don't have a good excuse for engaging. Then you could just go back through that list and send a bunch of emails and say, hey, do you want to give me some money? But that's a little bit awkward. And so it's easier just to focus on new, find somebody, maybe they'll buy on the first call. That would be so exciting. They really don't know what to say. How do you go back and restart those conversations? I think that uncertainty is what causes the business owner to just leave the list dormant.
Now think about how a book changes that conversation, right? So walk us through what happens when an attorney reaches out to a cold prospect with a book instead of like your typical email check-in, essentially.
Yeah, so it actually goes one step better than that, is as soon as you decide that you're going to start writing a book, you have an excuse to engage. So you can go back to the people that you talked with last year and send them an email and say, hey, we spoke last year. Just wanted to let you know I have started writing a book, and the title is, insert whatever the title is. Doesn't have to be the final title.
Yeah.
When I have the first chapter ready, would you be interested in seeing it? Just send that. You're going to get all sorts of people out of the woodwork saying, oh, wow, that's so cool. Congratulations. I'd love to see it. And then you reply with, hey, a year ago we talked about this and you thought it was kind of interesting. It wasn't the right time. Do you want to have another conversation about that?
I don't think I've ever heard. So this is how you can tell immediately for our listeners that someone is an expert on this, is what's kind of exciting. I've never thought I'm in the process of writing a book called the Elder Law Advantage book. It's meant to motivate estate planning attorneys from us as an agency being fully aware for the last 10 years. A lot of the observations we've made for why those type of attorneys should learn about Medicaid planning in their specific states, with the exception of a few of them. But I've never thought. I have my manuscript's almost completed, done. It's like essentially I've been working on this for like the last 6 months, but I never thought to just send out my first chapter to people. I want this model to be completely finished, but I think it would be cool to send them my prologue and my first chapter essentially to a few people. I've been waiting for my manuscript to be completely done to then send to some influential attorneys in this space essentially. So what an interesting model. So I can see the vision why that would also work for a lot of people.
Yeah. There's like two different purposes it can serve. There's the purpose of feedback, where you have especially a short list of people that you really want to hear from and get substantive feedback on the content of the book. And then the other side is building community, helping people feel like they have access to you, like they're getting a special preview, and just an excuse to restart the conversation. If you go and find all of the estate planning attorneys, elder law attorneys that you talked to 12 months ago and offer them your book, a couple of them might send you feedback. But if you just get to restart those conversations in a way that feels natural and not salesy, that's a huge win.
Yeah, it is. And so actually what a great segue into now let's try to make this real, right? So, for an estate planning and elder law attorney, if someone's listening and wanted to run this exact play, let's say like tomorrow or next month, how should they think about their list and then like the message, like what the topic of the book should be?
You have to be genuinely committed to writing a book. You can't just say, I'm going to write a book and then never do it. So if you're not ready to commit to that, then you can decide that you're going to write a really good article or a guide and say, hey, I'm putting together a guide for insert your target audience on how to solve XYZ problem. And are you interested in seeing it when it's done? Or I've got it halfway done. Could I get your feedback? So that's what you can do if you're not ready to write the full book. If you are interested in writing a full book, whether you do it with a company like Paperback Expert or you do it totally on your own, then you don't even have to come up with the title yet. You could just reach out and say, hey, I've just started writing a book. I'm hoping to have the first chapter done in a couple weeks. Would you be interested in seeing it when it's ready? Question mark, send. You don't have to do any hard selling there. You shouldn't do any hard selling there. You are just looking for an excuse to reopen the conversation.
What recommendations would you make to someone? And maybe this opens the door a little bit to your processes as well. I know you hinted at it before, which is, letting them kind of throw up their ideas to you guys. Then what happens from there?
The core of our process is a series of interviews. We match up the expert, attorney, financial advisor, other small business owner, who's an expert at what they do, with one of the writers on our team who is an expert at writing books. And that is the alchemy that causes the magic to happen.
Yeah.
So on those interview calls, the writer just asks question after question. Why do you do things this way? What are the mistakes? What are the myths? Tell me about this client success story. And the author just gets to talk the same way that they talk to their clients, the same way that they talk to their prospects. We capture and record all of that, transcribe it, and then the writer has 8 to 10 hours of the author's own voice. And that's how we can write in the author's voice. People ask us all the time, how do you make it sound like me? Like, well, you just spent a lot of hours on Zoom together, and then we transcribe it all, and that is the raw material from which the book is made. So it's actually not that hard to write in your voice. In order for those calls to go well, you just need to have first a period of book ideation and outlining. And so that is where we start. People come to us sometimes with a fairly fully fleshed out book idea. Sometimes they just know they want to write a book. They've been thinking about it for decades, but they're not quite sure what it should be about. So we always start with book ideation, produce a document that we call a book blueprint, which goes over the topic, the target audience, the title, the theme, discuss that, get the author and our full team on the same page. And then we move into outlining. Outlining in advance of those content interviews allows so much more confidence because you literally get to look at the document with chapters and then bullet points under every chapter. Here's the points I'm going to make. Here's the stories I'm going to share. Here's what I want to include. And you have a big long document say, oh yeah, I can talk about every single one of these individual bullet points. And so I guess I could say enough to have a full book. And then you move into the content interviews and just march right through it.
How do you guys handle the number of pages and how long the book should be and the nuance of it not being too long or too short?
Yeah, for an elder law or estate planning attorney who is working with individuals, the right length is typically about 150 printed pages, plus or minus 25. We've done some that are shorter, we've done some that are longer, but about 150 pages is the sweet spot because it is not so long that it's intimidating, but it still has thump factor. When you put it down on the desk, has some weight. It's definitely not a pamphlet, nor is it War and Peace.
I love it. And then does it matter the cover? Like, I think for a lot of people, sometimes they overthink things, but does that nuance even matter? The type of cover the book has?
People do judge a book by its cover, and there's the need to avoid bad covers, and then there's a wide spectrum of good to fantastic covers. So avoiding bad covers, there's like the classic self-published book cover, which is title at the top, some cheesy stock photo in the middle of it, and then the author's name at the bottom.
Yeah.
If you publish that, then everyone will know you did this yourself and you couldn't be bothered. Or you hired somebody off of Fiverr who, spent 30 seconds on your cover before moving on to the next project. I'm glad for people who, anybody who writes and gets a book out, it's an accomplishment. And so some people, that's the best they can do. And great, I'm glad it's out and you can go and update the cover later on. But if you are looking to present this book as a part of your business's brand, as part of a marketing initiative, then it needs to look good. And so that can be simple. You can just have a cover that's a solid color background, your title on it and your name, and that's it. And that can be done well with just the text. All the way up to working with a professional cover designer like we have on staff who knows what's working in books these days and pulls in your personal design philosophy. Do you want to use your brand colors? Do you want it to be separate? All of that work can be done by a professional cover designer to make a cover that looks really sharp, that doesn't look out of place on the table at Barnes and Noble or in your local bookstore.
I love it. And then the book getting published, where does the medium exist at that point? Like once it's published, what recommendations do you make to the attorney? Do you make it so that it's easy and accessible to anyone? You put it on Amazon, you put it on Barnes and Noble, or is it something that the firm just really holds into their office for this specific type of list that we talked about, like the warm list, the hot list, the people that are engaged or not engaged with the firm? What is your recommendation on that angle?
We do publish and recommend that everyone publish to Amazon at least paperback and Kindle, so a physical edition and a digital edition. You can also do hardcover and you can do audiobook. Some of our authors want those, some of them don't. You definitely want it on Amazon, mainly for the sake of credibility. People just think of Amazon as the place to get books. They have very effectively dominated that space. And so even if your main marketing strategy for the book is going to be getting it into the hands of your prospective clients, which it should be, when you give them a book, you can bet they are going to go and they're going to look on Amazon. They're going to type it into Google, and you want it to show up. You want it to be there with professional cover and a description of the book. And then they say, oh, okay, this is a real book. And then they close down Amazon and go back to reading it.
I love it. And then let's now have maybe what I would consider maybe a hard question, but for you and I think it would be very easy. When we built our book, the main driver was revenue. We thought of that, right? When we made our book, it was meant to educate. The education drives the urgency. I think if done right, the education is what drives people to then be comfortable to take the next step. And then part of that is your call to action. What is the thing that people are being fed to next? I think that vision of where you're leading people from the book to whatever your firm's or your business's next step is very important, if not more important than probably than the context of the book itself. When you guys build and you have people in-house essentially that want to get a book made, how do you think about that part of the process as well?
You're right to say that the book educates, the book causes them to understand who you are and what you stand for, and causes them to be more comfortable then when they have finished the book with the idea of working with you. Authors do not need to worry about giving too much away in their book, especially
Yes.
in an industry like elder care law, estate planning law. You're just not going to write a book that removes your reader's need for you. There's no way. It would have to be 1,000 pages long and they'd have to go to school for 5 years. It's never
Yes.
going to happen. So no matter how much you share about the mistakes they need to avoid, the areas they need to look into, the different options available to them, you can just give value, 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 education, education, education. And at the end, they're going to say, wow, this is amazing. I learned so much. I will never make those mistakes. And I need some help. And I know the person. All you have to do at the end of the book is say, if this has described you, if you found this book to be helpful and you understand that you have this urgent need, then we should probably talk again. So here's my
Yes.
office phone number. Here is my website.
I personally believe, and I know I've tracked this, I've tracked when I send books through Amazon, when I hand them out at a conference, and when I've had a conversation and then I send a book to them, us sending with a personal message in packaging to the law firm, to the attorney that I want the book to be received by. The books that I pack myself, they typically perform better than me just like, buying it and sending it through like a platform like Amazon. Is that stuff that you guys also recommend to attorneys? Like, you know, the best thing you can do is hand it to someone if you can, but if you can't, personally mailing the book versus sending them an email with like the ebook or something of that nature.
Yes, I think what you're getting at is there is sort of a ladder of how personal the receipt of the book feels for the
Yes.
prospective client. Obviously, the most personal is you're at the conference, they're at the conference, you hand them a copy.
Yes.
In most selling scenarios, that's not an option. So the issue with just sending it from Amazon is you're way down there. Like they get a package from Amazon and it's a book, cool, but they get lots of packages from Amazon, and most of them it's just because they went and ordered stuff. So one step higher than that is like sending an email with a digital ebook version, which is not a physical, tangible object. So that is a point in its disfavor, but it is personal and comes from you. And then for the prospects where it would be worthwhile, and if you're selling multi-$1,000 services, then a lot of prospects, it's worthwhile, is to actually mail them a book yourself. We'd recommend having some sort of branded packaging. It can be as simple as a colored bubble mailer. My dad has told
Yeah.
many clients, just go and buy bright, shiny gold bubble mailers because nobody gets those and they will open it immediately.
Yeah.
So something like that, you stick a copy of the book in, you have some typical, personal note, like you can print the note and then sign your name at the bottom. You don't have to handwrite the whole thing, or you just grab a sticky note and handwrite something. Make sure to sign the book as well. That makes it more personal. Stick it in the mail, ship it to them.
Do you think it's better to write the personalized message inside the cover of the book, essentially? Do you think it's good to highlight the sections that you think are relevant to the recipient based off of previous conversations and things of that nature? Or do you think it's just better to just put a separate message, personalized message into the book itself? What are your recommendations on that?
Depends on how much you want to say. I think at a minimum, sign the book. It is probably then good to also write a short message right there. It could be what big authors do, just, one line, or you could write 2 or 3 lines. Anything more than that, it just becomes a workflow issue where it's going to take you time to do that. And so you probably want to have some sort of standardized message explaining this is the book, this is why it's important. After you read it, if you want to get in touch, just have that be a standard printed sheet of paper that you add your signature to and put it in there with the book. And if you do know, like, oh, they really need to read chapter 8, then have a bookmark as well and stick it in chapter 8 and just scribble see chapter 8 first.
How challenging is this? Like, how do you answer the question of, I just don't have the time to do this right now? What is your best response to a question like that?
It is challenging to put a book out, and that is part of why it is so powerful as a marketing asset for your business. If everyone could write a book, then they wouldn't be special. This is why
Yes.
having a social media profile where you post once a week is not a major competitive advantage. It is
Yes.
easy, and so everyone does it.
Yes.
Whereas if you put in the effort to create a book, people know that took time, that took effort, that is hard, and they respect that. It gives you a
Yes.
credibility boost. So that said, the concept of zone of genius is relevant here. Where is your zone of genius? What do you need to be doing and putting your energies toward? Our perspective is that the author needs to be producing the content for the book. The author doesn't necessarily need to be producing that by writing it out or typing on a keyboard. They can do it by speaking instead. But the
Yes,
author
sure.
certainly does not need to be fiddling with the font size inside the layout or researching how do you get an ISBN number. That
Or the
is
size of the
certainly not.
books. Yeah.
Yeah, the size of the book. Do you do 6x9? Do you do 5.5 by 8.5? Do you do print on
Yes.
demand or offset printing? All stuff that smart, intelligent business owners could figure out for themselves if that was the highest and best use of their time.
Yes.
For most business owners, it's just not. And so that's why Paperback Expert exists, because we do all of the heavy lifting for all of that stuff. We're the book experts. We're not elder law experts. We're not estate planning experts. We're the book experts. And we just match up with people who are experts at what they do and help get their genius out of their head and onto the printed page.
I will definitely be recommending you guys because I've heard nothing but great things about your company.
Thank you.
Now, how do people find you?
Paperbackexpert.com is our website. So paperback like a book and then expert singular. If you go to paperbackexpert.com, then it will explain what we do, how we do it. You can read success stories of previous clients who are using their book to grow their business. And there's a big red button that says schedule a call. And all you got to do is click that and it'll go right to a calendar. If you are also active on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active there. Feel free to send me a connection request and say, hey, heard you on Jason's podcast.
Caleb, thank you so much for the time. It was great getting to meet you over this medium and having this great conversation. And I look forward to having a stronger relationship with you as well.
You're very welcome, Jason. Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Elder Law Growth Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things marketing for elder law and estate planning law firms. Here you can find all of the tools and skills you need to market your own practice without wasting your time. If you like this podcast, please leave us a review wherever you're listening. And if you're ready to take the pressure off and let our team handle your marketing, visit bambiz.net and book a free call with us today.